Welcome to the All-Star Athlete Podcast, your guide to mastering the mental game and reaching your full potential.
If you've been listening to the podcast and you've found the episodes to be informative and or interesting, I encourage you to subscribe to the podcast. I will be releasing episodes weekly, so subscribing to the podcast is the best way to stay up to speed on when the new episodes are released and to make sure that you don't miss any of the content. Also, liking each episode, if you have in fact been enjoying the content, as well as leaving any questions or comments that you may have down below, also go a long way in supporting the podcast. So thank you so much for listening and enjoy the show. Today's episode is sponsored by Neeks93.com. That's Neeks 93.com. There, you can grab Nika Sedghi's ebook, Outsmarting Your Brain with Nutrition Basics, plus her macro cheat sheets and meal recipe book to help you simplify nutrition, stay consistent, and build a lifestyle that lasts. Whether you're an athlete, a weekend warrior, or just trying to get your nutrition on track, Nika's tools are designed to help you fuel better, feel better, and perform at your best. Check out those resources at Neeks93.com. I'd like to sort of formally introduce you to the show. And it's nice to have you here. As I mentioned earlier, this is episode number 30 of the All-Star Athlete Podcast. And I'll have you introduce yourself first and foremost. So if you just want to kind of take the floor and introduce yourself for our listeners real quick, and then we'll move forward from there.
Sure. My name is Nika Sedghi. I'm a mechanical engineer full-time, but have a little bit of an athletic background with playing water polo in college at San Diego State University, followed by some bodybuilding. I did a couple years of bodybuilding, and then that led to a couple TV shows. So the first one was CMT's Broken Skull Challenge. Second one was NBC Titan Games. So it's been a fun road.
Okay. And regarding those two TV shows, so you were on NBC's, was it NBC?
Yes.
You were on NBC's
The Titan Games.
The Titan Games. So you met Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, or maybe he met you.
Oh, I definitely met him.
Okay, you met him. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I assume he seems like a pretty cool guy. So
Yes.
First, was he as charming in person as he's made out to be? Or, what was the coolest part of that whole experience?
So he really was. He really was just as cool as he presents himself as. The little fun fact is that he did end up cursing more than I think the producers wanted him to, so we had to redo a couple takes. But solid guy. He showed up on set. He came. He introduced himself. He switched into his tank top. Had to go get his lift in. It was strictly to business, and just a really sweet guy. And later on in the interview, I'll share kind of one thing he shared that just meant the world in terms of the exit on his show. I'll let you know about that, but it was cool. Sweet guy.
Okay, so when you said he changed into his tank top and had to go get a lift on, was that so that he had a nice pump
No,
on,
I just
or
think
just
he arrived on set and he was like, I need to get my lift in. Hold
oh,
on,
okay.
guys, nice to meet you guys, but we've got business to take care of. And we're like, okay, cool.
Priority number one, right?
Number one,
Not
yeah,
skipping
off
the
plane.
workout.
Sure.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Second question, I suppose, these are kind of what I classify as pre-game questions. We're just kind of getting to know you a little bit for our listeners. I assume that you eat pretty healthy, generally speaking.
Yes, sir.
But if you're like me, when you were a kid, you had some delicious snacks that you indulged in. And maybe you have some delicious snacks that you indulge in right now.
Sure.
But as far as when you were a kid, because I think we're of the same generation, generally speaking, were you more of a Dunkaroos fan, or were you more of a Gushers fan?
Okay, what's interesting is I didn't really get to have all the fun snacks growing up. I always had really healthy snacks. My mom did an incredible job making my lunches. So every once in a while, I would beg and get a Gushers pack. I didn't even know what a Dunkaroo was or is, so we don't know what that is. So Gushers were the go-to. I think Fruit by the Roll, was that something at some point?
Fruit by the Foot or something?
Fruit
or Fruit Roll-Up?
Something.
Yeah.
Those were really fun. And then I feel like I also really begged for Lunchables once every 3 months that I might have gotten one of those pizza kits.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, maybe I'm aging myself, but Dunkaroos were kangaroo-shaped cookies, kind of.
Okay.
And you would peel back the plastic, and there was kind of they're like graham crack, or what are those, the graham cracker bears,
Teddy
Grahams, or
yes,
something
those
like
were
that.
Good too.
So they were kind of like that, except there was a little frosting dipperoo
Okay.
thingamajig. Kind of like, did you ever have the little breadsticks with the cheese dip?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Thank God I'm not that old.
Yeah, no. Those we recall.
Okay. All right.
Didn't have those often
Yeah,
either, but those were
Dunkaroos.
the cool kids had all those.
Fruit roll-ups or fruit
Yeah.
by the foot, I think. Gushers. There's probably some more.
I could
Goldfish
tell
is
you
a
at my
classic.
cafeteria, I remember I think it was like 25 cents or 50 cents. And I was so excited to buy it every so often. But an oatmeal cream pie and a Star Crunch were my go-tos. Do you remember those?
Oatmeal cream pies
Yep.
are awesome.
Next level.
I like oatmeal cookies, though.
Same. Okay. I'm so happy
That's
you
a
said
very
that.
controversial
It is, and I'm
topic,
glad
though.
we're sitting here together sharing
Yes.
this moment because I feel like it's an uphill battle with everybody else.
How about raisins, though? Yes?
Love.
Okay. Oatmeal
Love.
raisin cookies. Yes. Oatmeal in anything, really,
Yeah,
is
I
good.
agree.
But that's a
Complex
very...
carbs, right? Come on.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, aside from that, though. But
Sure.
banana bread is actually my favorite baked
Same,
good.
actually.
Banana bread.
You're doing great.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I wish I had some right now for you.
I know.
Gluten-free, though. Do you do gluten-free?
I don't. I haven't
Okay.
partaken.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
King Arthur flour, though, for
Okay.
anybody that might be listening, if you're interested in the best gluten-free flour, that's the
Sure.
best one that I've found, King Arthur flour.
Nice.
Okay, next question, and then we'll kind of get into the main slate here. So,
Sure.
if you had to pick your all-time favorite cartoon character, who would it be and why? Are we talking like SpongeBob, Scooby-Doo, Bugs Bunny, or somebody else unexpected?
Okay, probably somebody else unexpected, and it's going to be Simba from Lion King. I'm a Leo. I love lions. When I was a kid, my mom said I used to watch The Lion King just on repeat, and I would just continually cry at the important scenes and watch it again and again. So Simba has always been my go-to little cartoon if I had to pick one.
Okay, young Simba,
Young Simba.
baby Simba?
Yeah, baby Simba.
Okay. Actually, funny story about The Lion King. That's the first movie that I ever saw in movie theaters.
Nice.
Yeah,
That's
I
a good
remember
one.
that with my cool uncle. Everybody, or hopefully most people have a cool uncle. But yeah, Lion King is definitely one of my favorites as
Has
well.
my heart.
So that's your favorite Disney movie then, I'm guessing?
Yes.
Okay. For
And animal, a lion.
and
Like for just a favorite animal.
oh,
I think it'd be a
okay.
lion.
Oh,
Yeah.
the lions. Okay,
Yeah.
because you're a Leo.
Yes.
Okay, gotcha. I'm a Pisces.
Nice.
But I don't know if my favorite animals are fish. Some fish are cool though.
Yeah. Depends. There's a lot of fish.
Sharks are fish.
Definitely.
They're cool.
Right.
All right. Here we go. So let's get into the main slate here. So you describe yourself as, or you call yourself, I guess, sort of officially an engineer, an athlete, a nutrition nerd, which is quite the trio. Probably not a lot of people that can call themselves all three of those things. How do those identities shape you, and how do they show up kind of day to day, both in and out of the gym for you?
Sure. Okay. We'll start with the engineer. It gives you this constant need to like solve problems, right? You see a problem and your instinct is, how do I fix it? And how do I fix it efficiently and fast? The next one, being an athlete, being a D1 athlete, it's discipline, right? It's clock in, clock out, even when you don't feel like it, continue to show up. And then the nutrition nerd, I would say, after getting my nutrition cert through NASM, really helped me just kind of open my eye to what processed food looks like, what kind of ingredients you're putting in your body regularly, what macros are, understanding how to basically manipulate the way you look as I was bodybuilding based on your caloric intake and obviously your daily expenditure. Yeah.
Okay, so as far as the dieting piece goes, talk to me a little bit about, you've dieted and you've probably done some reverse dieting.
Sure.
So reverse dieting, is that like eating your food in reverse, like dessert comes first, or?
That's funny. No, so a reverse diet is slowly adding in calories to get back to your maintenance calories. So after a show, it's tradition to shove a bunch of sweets in your face and feel like you're done, right? Your feet's over. But to get your metabolism back to where you want to inch your way essentially back up to your maintenance calories and basically put on that weight in a healthy manner, not just a bunch of fat. So you're still keeping your cardio in, and I'm going to credit my coach at the time that I was working under. It was funny. It was called Team Titan as I was on the Titan games, which not related, but anyway, that was my team.
Team Titan, not
Team Titan.
Teen Titans? Isn't that like a kid's TV show or something like that?
It was Team Titan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Through World Gym in San Diego.
So not just shoving oatmeal cream pies and
Right.
gushers
No.
in your face.
I remember I would diet for like 8 to 10 weeks. And I remember the first time my coach gave me a cheat meal, he was like, get what you want, like get a dessert. And I remember being like, what does that mean? Like, how much? Like, do I get 5? Do I get 1? I think, like, if you don't come from, like, a restrictive, like, or obsessive, like, perfectionist mindset, it might just be easy to go enjoy something and call it a day. In my mind, I was like, well, what do I do? And I think I just had, like, 2 sushi rolls and, like, I don't even know if I had a sweet, to be honest, because I was trying to be, like, most perfect, most optimal. My coach was like, what? No, I told you to go, like, enjoy yourself and get, like, a sweet treat.
Yeah.
So I definitely struggled with that.
Okay. Yeah. The funny thing is, I mean, I haven't done bodybuilding, but I'm a personal trainer and I train in a bodybuilding type way, and I eat in a bodybuilding type way, meaning I don't track all my calories and macros and so forth. And I have a pretty good idea of what I eat because I've done it enough. Yeah. But when you eat healthy all the time, which I pretty much do, like no alcohol, basically don't do takeout, don't really do fast food, like these kind of things. In fact, I've never ordered on DoorDash or Uber Eats a day in my life.
Amazing.
Never have done that.
Yeah.
But when you eat healthy all the time, you're kind of like not really enticed by, I mean, I'm not. Cheat meals and stuff, it's just like, I actually like the food that I eat. Yeah. It tastes good to me.
I agree. I think once you kind of change your palate, which is I think what you're describing, it's really easy to find enjoyment in those regular, beautiful foods that like came from the earth and are minimally processed. I will say that finding balance in enjoying those sweet treats, going out, getting ice cream with friends, is something that I've had to learn to balance, but it's just learning. It's trial and error. It's seeing how much you can get away with and still continue to look the way you want to look. And it's been a roller coaster because I've had a couple injuries along the way. I've changed the way I've trained with COVID, basically stopped going to World Gym, changed my bodybuilding split. I was lifting a little bit here and there at my home gym, but it wasn't with the same intensity. Ended up roller skating, which was still great, but it looked different and my composition changed for sure.
Okay. Are you still bodybuilding now?
So not competing anymore, but still have the traditional split, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I enjoy it.
You started your career as a D1 water polo player at San Diego State University, is that correct?
Yes.
What was that chapter of your life like, and how did it lay the groundwork for who you are today?
Sure. So being an athlete, right? It's like I was saying earlier, it's learning that discipline is what's going to take you through that championship game. It's the showing up when you don't want to. It's being there for something bigger than yourself, a team, right? Being an engineer while playing a sport was challenging. So time management was something that I had to really dial in, which is a great lesson for life, right? When you get in the real world with work. So yeah, I'm going to really just dial in on the discipline that was taken out of college sports, where you're showing up for your PT, you're showing up for your weights, you're showing up for your practice, your footage. I mean, there's so much time that you're putting into your sport.
Did you participate, I'm guessing, in water polo in high school, or did you kind of just like make the jump into the deep end, so to speak, right transition, like figure it out in college kind of thing, or you must have played in high school?
Yeah, I definitely played in high school. So I played at La Costa Canyon and I swam on the swim team as well, which they go hand in hand.
Okay. Did you ever consider pursuing swimming, like sort of officially as a D1 college sport, or it was all water polo all the way?
It was water polo all the way. Swim was fun, but it was fun because I wanted to get better at water polo. I enjoyed the team element of water polo, and there wasn't much joy in just getting faster. Like I enjoyed it in high school, but the team element. I'm an extrovert. I'm a friends person. I'm not a solo.
Okay. Yeah, most swimmers athlete. Are probably pretty introverted, huh?
Definitely.
I had to guess. I would
say. I don't want to jump to conclusions, but it's likely.
Yeah, I'd say it's pretty likely as well. And then after college, you made a pretty major pivot from water polo to bodybuilding, which is an interesting transition. So what inspired that shift, and what was the biggest mental adjustment during that transition period?
Sure. So I would say again, being an athlete, when you spend so many hours of your day training, watching film, in the weight room, and then you go to just working a regular 9 to 5, you find this like hole in your life where you're like, what do I do with all this time? And you go and you hit the gym and it's fine. But like, if you're not like trucking towards that like championship or like some goal, it's challenging to stay motivated. So I was like, let's pick this up. And the gym that I was training at, there was a coach that was offering some bodybuilding preps, and it was just a friend of mine who was like, do you want to do this? And I was like, yeah, let's go. Let's be competitive again and kind of add that spark back into what has been my life for so many years.
Okay. I've actually had a lot of athletes come onto this show, and describe this sensation that you're describing, where basically that
hole?
post, yeah, kind of this passion or this fire that still burns in athletes once you graduate or retire from,
right?
Because you have to put, I kind of hate the phrase 110%. We'll call it 100% of your energy and your effort into being the best athlete that you can be in high school or in college, right? And it requires a certain level of passion and fire and commitment and discipline and showing up every single day. And then when you don't have that anymore, it creates this hole, like you were saying. Yep. And a lot of athletes post-retirement struggle with, where do I put that? Yeah. Because you're still an athlete.
Yeah. You miss it.
Yeah. So it sounds like you found that in bodybuilding. You were able to channel some of that fire.
Exactly.
In that competitive drive. You've always been a little competitive, I'm guessing.
You could say that, yes.
So what was the biggest mental transition then from going from a team sport like water polo to a largely individual sport like bodybuilding?
Sure. I'll say that the dieting is a 24/7 commitment, right? When you are playing your sport, you have your swimsuit on, your goggles, you take it off and you're done, right? I mean, there's times you're watching film or whatnot, but with dieting, it's a 24/7. It's on your mind when you're in a deficit, you're hungry. So you're constantly thinking about food. You're constantly adjusting how you are going to be at the restaurant, the family gathering, dating. Like there's just so many things that you don't have to think about when you're an athlete in college. You're like, yeah, I clocked into practice and now I have practice and whatever, but I'm eating what I want. The mental, I'm going to almost call it a burden of trying to figure out what your life's going to look like during a bodybuilding prep is challenging. So you can isolate yourself and just eat your chicken rice and whatever your coach has on the meal plan, right? But like if you want, and I think I did that for my first prep, but immediately I was like, how do I learn the ins and outs of flexible dieting so then I could just track my macros, go do what I want. And still, you're still pretty limited, but like at least you feel like you could go share a meal with friends out and just like approximate. And again, as you do it for more years, as you were kind of explaining, you have an eye for what 4 to 6 ounces of protein looks like. You know what protein sources to choose that are less calorically dense and what to say to avoid those kind of like extra calories that kind of just get you in the long run if you ignore them.
So it was mostly just the dieting aspect of it and prepping for a bodybuilding show was kind of like a full-time thing.
Yeah, I would say the mental load of tracking everything that goes in your mouth was very challenging.
Taxing.
Yeah, taxing.
Okay. So to that point, you've been pretty open about your post-college struggles with weight and sort of eating habits that come along with dieting and prepping and measuring everything with the scale probably. Yep. So what was the turning point that led you to commit to the long-term lifestyle change?
Okay, so I wanted to have this like food freedom, right? Because there was great comfort in tracking everything, controlling every variable. As an engineer, that's a very comfortable place to be. When I anticipated just stopping tracking, I thought it'd be just like a peaceful, it's going to be fine. Narrator in life said things weren't going to be fine. So there were moments where I was binge eating because I felt like, oh, I'm going to get back on it on Monday. And then, what I did Sunday, doesn't count. It was just a rough cycle to fall into. So I believe it was actually, so I tried multiple times is what I'm trying to say, but I always still in some capacity tracked or ate very similar things. You'll catch people that don't track. They just eat the same 12 things and they're cool with it. And
that's kind of me.
100%. Again, I get it. I've been there. I still do that to a degree now because it's just easy. It's the path of least resistance. But I ended up snapping my humerus in half at my strongman competition, which forced me to not be able to work out, which forced me in some capacity to gain more weight than anticipated when I was usually more physically active. And it was that moment of, I'm not going to track. I don't have control over this. I'm going to just give it. I think it really took probably about, and no one's going to want to hear this, probably about a year of not tracking and just eating intuitively and building that confidence that I'm not just going to turn into this orca whale because I have zero control over sweets, to finally believe that you're free in terms of choosing what you can eat. Because honestly, it's restricting anything just makes you want it more. And I think everyone will agree. There are fad diets, and we could probably get into that later if you have questions. But I don't agree with them. When people ask me, there was a long time where I was known for my nutrition reviews on Instagram, Monday through Saturday almost. I would put up a food item. I would ask people if it was Neeks approved. They would vote yes or no. And then I'd go through the macros and convert the numbers into something that's more common, like a food item like egg whites. I'd be like, instead of like the numbers, I'd be like, that's the equivalent of like 4 egg whites, 5 slices of toast, and 3 tablespoons of butter. If that sounds like a balanced way to start your breakfast, proceed. Like, I'm literally not here to tell you otherwise. I just want to put it in perspective since these numbers are arbitrary. Also, the sugar in grams. I bet you could ask 20 adults what that means. 20 grams, 60 grams. They'd have no idea. Like, in theory, you could get out a scale and they could pour it out, but you could just tell them to divide by 4 and tell them, well, that's 16 teaspoons of sugar in that Starbucks drink. Does that seem like, do you think you would watch yourself put 16 teaspoons into the drink and then hand it to a little kid for like their unicorn drink or something? I don't think they would. So my biggest like goal was just to put nutrition in perspective for people and like educate them in terms of like how satiety cues work and let them make the decision. I think a lot of people really appreciated that. No one likes to be told what to do.
No, they don't. And nobody likes to be sort of shamed into what they're eating and what they're giving to their children and stuff like that. Yeah. But that doesn't make it any less valuable and any less true.
Right.
And I appreciate the honesty, quite frankly. And a big portion of this podcast is honesty about experiences. So please be as honest as you can and want to be here.
Yeah, sure.
So regarding the weight loss and weight gain, was the strong, we'll call it a strong woman competition, was that before the bodybuilding?
It was after. So it was after the TV show. I was contacted.
Okay. Okay. Because I have a question about your bodybuilding prep.
Sure.
So it was over a period of 20 weeks, if I'm not mistaken. You ended up losing 40 pounds and winning first place, all while managing heart issues and staying natural.
Yeah.
Big deal. Awesome.
Thank you.
What helped you stay disciplined, and how did you balance performance with your health?
Okay, what helped me keep discipline? I'm a type A girly. I'm an engineer. I'm a do everything to the T. If you are planning to do something naturally and you have hopes of beating people, you know that your only way that you're going to win is making sure you clock in and clock out and leave 0 stones unturned. So that was my goal. I was like, I know I'm going up against the Ferraris. I'm in a Honda Civic, let's say, and they're in Ferraris. And I learned very quickly after my first season that I wasn't going to beat them at the national level because performance enhancing drugs were more used, I would say, or utilized at that level. And no, I'm not going to talk down on their incredible athletes. They work darn hard. I think you have to put yourself in the industry to really understand it. It's easy to be on the outside and just make all the assumptions and think that it's just some magic situation. So I want to be clear about that. It's just not something I would want to do with my life or with my body for any sort of IFBB Pro card or tiara, sword, things like that. I just really enjoyed pushing my body to that extreme, seeing what I could accomplish. So I think the first question was discipline, right?
Yeah, so the first question was, how did you stay disciplined during that 20-week prep, losing 40 pounds, managing heart issues, and staying natural at the same? So sounds like you stayed disciplined because you're an engineer and you didn't want to trash your body, basically. And the second question was, how did you balance your performance with your health? It sounds like kind of carryover, same answer, right?
Same answer, yeah. I didn't want to compromise my body for this sport. I guess playing even a college sport, you see what a toll, playing a sport and training at a certain level is. And after a couple of years of, again, just realizing that like I wasn't going to be a pro without, taking any sort of performance enhancing drugs, I just kind of took a step back and I was like, I did my best. I did everything here. I got to see some incredible results, but decided to kind of pull away from bodybuilding after that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's pivot a little bit here to talking about the TV shows that you referenced earlier. So you were on NBC's The Titan Games. Yep. When was that? What year?
I think it aired like 2018 or 19. It's been like five-ish years, I think.
Did that have like multiple seasons, or was that just like a one and done kind of thing?
I think there was 2 seasons. I didn't watch the second season, to be honest.
Okay. And you were on a show on country music television?
Yes. Steve Austin's Broken Skull Challenge. Okay.
So can you tell us a little bit more about those TV shows and kind of what was it like being on national television?
Sure. So the first one with Steve Austin, I remember there was just like an online application, applied, talked to the producers. I think they had us up in like a hotel. It was like filmed basically in one day. And basically you sign your life away with a huge stack of papers. And basically you're just promising not to like actively like hurt the other person in competition. There are crazy obstacles and things that you have to go through. Basically, they walk you through it and they say, this is what the goal is of this challenge. This person's going up against this person. They do some B-roll. They cover up all your logos. Sometimes they do your makeup. But overall, it's just a really fun way to athletically show people that are watching this that they too can get up and kind of move their body and do similar things, as we are also just, I'm an engineer, I'm a full-time, that was, and the second show being the Titan Games, that was what Dwayne The Rock Johnson really wanted to do, is just showing people that everyday people with everyday jobs can be, I'm going to say slightly above average and do cool things physically. And again, the goal was to inspire the regular person to get up and move, in my opinion, which I can jump to this point now. I remember when I got eliminated finally, I shook Dwayne's hand and he said, "Thank you so much for taking time out of your career to come film my show." And I was like, wow, I really appreciate you acknowledging that I definitely was on, Zoom calls with customers and then filming the TV show through the night. And they do that because they want to control the lighting. So in terms of like your athletic abilities and how you've trained to like compete during the day and have a warm up and, stretch. And for this, it's like, is your hair and makeup done? Are all your logos covered? And okay, yep, you're up in 5. And I'm like, up in 5? Do I stretch? Do I take pre-workout? What am I doing? So
down a Celsius, probably.
Literally. And their like snack table was just like candy. And I was like, really? That's crazy.
Get the sugar going. Let's go.
Going. Yeah. So that's what
Simple
it was
carbs,
like.
baby.
It was a really fun way to meet really cool people. I feel like everybody that on both shows I'm still connected with in some capacity on social media. It's nice to see where they are, what they're doing, that little family that we created. And then just the biggest thing is like the number of people you in some capacity have the opportunity to inspire. I was so overwhelmed with all the messages from people that were like, wow, you're an Iranian woman, you're an engineer, this is so great to see you representing. And I, again, just overwhelmed support when it started airing, which was just really cool.
That is really cool.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not Dwayne The Rock Johnson, but thank you for taking time out of your day and your career to come film my show.
You're so welcome.
I appreciate that. So let's move on here to talk about your diet a little bit more.
Sure.
Right? Big part of your journey. You've talked about escaping the binge restrict cycle and building a more balanced relationship with food.
Right.
So what were the key mental strategies, I guess maybe aside from discipline that you mentioned earlier, or mindset shifts that helped you kind of break that pattern of binge eating?
Okay, so it really was just committing like full into being free with that food freedom, right? It's stopping tracking. You get so used to tracking for so many years. Dropping that needs, in my opinion, needs to be the first thing you do, because in some capacity, restricting something just doesn't give you the freedom that I think you're looking for. So if you are going through that cycle, I would hope that maybe you have a coach that you can work with so you have that support. But my goal when I was coaching clients was really helping them build that confidence around all those foods they convinced themselves they were going to lose control over. Because the way I'd explain it, I was like, if I give you a piece of chocolate every single day or 5 pieces of chocolate every single day, do you think after 45 days of eating chocolate, you're going to overeat that chocolate? No, you've convinced yourself that you really can have it at any time. And you don't have to have it in a crazy amount. Moderation is key, and I feel like everyone hates hearing that, but finding moderation just takes some trial and error. So I think another thing I wanted to point out, you had mentioned my heart condition. That truly was the pivotal moment where I was like, oh, I'm in a hospital bed and I can't play my sport right now. Immediately think of all the variables you can control. Okay, what's going in my body? Food. How am I fueling? How is that impacting what's going on? So that kind of really took off my obsessive idea of diving into nutrition and understanding everything I could.
Okay. What is your heart condition, by the way, if you don't mind sharing?
Sure. It's called SVT, supraventricular tachycardia. It's just an arrhythmia with my heart that I found. It's not a problem. I didn't get any surgery for it. It's just being aware of when I have my arrhythmia. Basically, my heart just starts beating faster. It feels like there's a little Energizer bunny in my heart. And then I could just bear down or kind of dunk my head in cold water to kind of kick it back into a regular rhythm.
That sounds a bit anxiety-inducing.
Yeah, What was interesting, it happened in a pool in college. And
For the first time?
Well, it had happened multiple times, I think, in my life on a smaller scale, and I never really noticed it or thought to tell anybody about it. And then it happened during a practice, and then that was the time I ended up being in the hospital. And then they did my, I think they tested my blood, and they were like, your tryptophan levels are high, and that only happens when you have a heart attack. And I was like, well, that's not great to hear. Let's keep me here overnight. They did an echo in the morning. So moral of the story, did all the tests, and I had an implanted heart rate monitor for months at a time, but I couldn't induce another episode for it to happen. And San Diego State didn't want to let me back in a pool until I knew what it was.
Understandable.
Yeah. Are you from here, by the way?
I am not from here.
Okay. So you didn't watch San Diego State basketball back in that era by any chance to know? I think his last name was Polo.
I did not.
It was a basketball
player. No, I'm from
the
East Coast originally.
Okay.
Yeah.
There was a basketball player that had SVT, and he ended up dropping on the basketball field. It was all over the news. Just passed out. And so I had that same thing. So the doctor that had experienced that with him was like, if you pass out and you're in water, you're drowning.
Right, of
so
course.
We're not letting you back in.
Yeah,
so
makes
anyway,
sense.
Yeah, it was just scary to have that stripped away, not knowing what's wrong. But it was that incident that really shook the, like, you better get this, you better do everything you can to make sure you're fueling your body as best as possible. If you're not moving through with any sort of medications to be on for your heart condition or anything like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So speaking of nutrition, you've written an ebook.
Yeah.
Called Outsmarting Your Brain with Nutrition Basics.
Yeah.
Which is such a powerful phrase.
I'm glad you think so. Thank you.
What does that mean to you, the title of the book, that phrase, and how do you actually outsmart your brain when it comes to nutrition?
Okay, so as an engineer, right, I'm trying to problem solve. I'm like, wait, this is literally just a formula. You can outsmart your brain. So there are things you can do to stretch your stomach. If you have, quote unquote, more vegetables with more fiber, you're getting more satiety cues. If you look at like the satiety index of a handful of foods, I'm sure you've potentially looked at that chart. You see like potatoes are at the top. So like if you choose items that are going to help you identify those satiety cues more easily, it's going to be easier to lose weight without tracking everything you put in your body. So being a bodybuilder that has done that, the first thing I say, I'm like, it's a curse and I wish that on nobody. I do think it's valuable for maybe a month of time to do it so you have some perspective of the cost of the general items that you're used to eating, right? It's like budgeting. It's like if you don't look ever, you're not going to get better at budgeting. But if you look at like the things you're spending on for like a month or two, then you realize, oh, okay, if I continually shop in this store, if I continually buy these items from these brands, you realize that it's easy to budget and keep your money essentially in check and making the correlation with calories in check, right? Without needing to check everything. So the book really was, how am I going to outsmart my brain here with giving it everything it can to give myself the best attempt at listening to those satiety cues. One analogy I always used to bring up was when adults were like, no, but like I'm going to overeat or whatever. I'm like, have you ever questioned like when you have to pee or like if you really have to pee? Like, no, you just like trust that your body like tells you that you need to pee and you just go. Like you don't question your ability to like interpret that. Like, are you really, like when people with food, they're like, well, am I hungry? Am I thirsty? Am I a million different things? I'm like, no. Like you have that ability. You just have to like regain that trust in that ability. And let me tell you, all these hyper palatable foods are engineered to make fireworks go off in your brain, right? And it's not making that an easier choice if you're consistently enjoying something like a Pop-Tart or, if you're just downing chips, like that's not going to do a good job of keeping you full, yet that cost you the same 200 calories that you could have gotten from something that was going to give you those satiety cues.
For sure. And who is the book primarily written for, and what's the biggest takeaway that you hope readers have from reading your book?
Sure. I would say anyone who's interested in losing weight and or let's just say bettering their body composition, right? Performance goals doesn't just have to be weight loss. Let's say composition. And someone who's interested in kind of going after it like a formula, right? Like inputs and outputs. If these inputs go in, these outputs are more likely to come out. If you want to track calories, I believe I did mention, how the calculators work online that say to use this many, calories if you're trying to maintain or lose weight, and talking about the differences in activity trackers. So it's really just made for someone who's interested in recomping and learning the basics, truly. Learning the basics that maybe you aren't taught in school, and so you're more aware of what the food industry is doing so they don't pull a fast one on you.
Okay. And in the book, do you address any like nutrition myths, or if not, what are some nutrition myths that you hear all the time that kind of drive you crazy and that you wish more people were aware of, or that you wish more athletes or fitness enthusiasts would kind of let go of?
Any fad diet that comes up, right? I feel like anyone who's in the nutrition space probably gets asked all the time, what do you think about this new diet? What do you think about that new diet? And my reflex answer always is, if you can wake up like literally with a smile on your face and do that for the rest of your life, proceed. Like there are some people who have had great results doing X diet, Y diet, right? But 9 times out of 10, when I ask people that question, they're like, oh, no, I can't do that. And I'm like, okay, then like, let's not be that drastic. Just as you wouldn't, walk into a gym and try to squat 225, let's say, on your first day walking into a gym. I don't know why you think you can walk into said diet and cut out all processed this and convince yourself that you're not drinking alcohol when maybe alcohol was something that you shared. Like there needs to be a progression. And that's really where the 1% better mindset came from, which is what I try to promote now.
Yeah, that's like your mantra, right? And you kind of live by that, and you kind of preach that to other people.
Yes, and I'll be clear, it came from James Clear, Atomic Habits.
Sure.
But definitely loved bringing that into the fitness space because it's so overwhelming to be, 70%, 80%, 100% better on Monday. Monday's going to be my day. I'm going to start and it's going to be perfect. And then you feel like you failed if you missed one little thing. And I was like, let me put that in perspective. Like, honestly, focus that 1%. It's easier to hold on. If anyone in life is further along than you in something, they've just failed at it more times. And that's what nutrition really is. If someone's in better shape, chances are they've really just failed at it more times. The number of times, unfortunately, that I've been injured in some capacity and not been able to move the way I wanted to or diet the way I wanted to diet and have gained some weight. I mean, it's a fluctuating situation with weight and the mindset, and it's just I've gone through it more times, getting it back, I should say.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people have kind of like an all or nothing type mentality.
Guilty.
Which, I mean, it sounds like you're aware of, which is great and is something that you've been working on. And then oftentimes a lot of the things that we work on individually are the things that we then sort of preach and help other people with.
Yeah,
because
definitely.
What better way to position yourself as an expert with other people than something that you've gone through personally?
Exactly.
So I'm sure you don't.
Athlete mentality is there. There still is that reflex, but with food, I've really had to challenge that, which is it's been good finding the balance post competing. It's been easier to do that, right? Because usually when I lock in for a competition or something, it's really easy for me to be all in. I'm like, I'm not tempted by the sweets. I'm not tempted by, because I want to make sure that I've, again, turned every single stone before I go into that competition. Because win or lose, I know I've done everything. But if I lose, let's say, and I didn't do everything, I screwed around, I didn't focus on my recovery, nutrition, that just doesn't sit well with me.
Yeah, actually perfect segue into my next question. So preparing for a bodybuilding show or just simply staying in excellent shape requires a lot of structure, discipline, right? But you've found ways to enjoy foods socially and have, I appreciate this term that you used, instead of cheat meals, you refer to them as treat meals, which I like that a lot.
Yeah.
Without losing control over everything. So that's key, is actually kind of engaging in those treat meals for the mental and emotional side of it, if not for the physical side.
Right.
How do you personally strike that balance between discipline and flexibility with your eating?
That's a great question. I would say if 80 to 90% of the time you know you are eating the way you're supposed to be eating, the way that works well for your body, that, again, 10, 20% you can enjoy and know that you're still going to be on track. Again, it's the all or nothing when they're like, oh, well, I had this one meal, so I might as well continue the rest of the weekend eating like this, and then on Monday I'll get back. You can do a lot of damage in an entire weekend of this open space of eating whatever I want. So I always used to say, like, if you do have something that feels off script, like, make sure your next 2 meals are good, And when I say good, just more balanced and, again, without getting into the details. Something that I always used to say is just like, if the earth made it less processed, don't stress about it. Like, no one ever, gained a ton of weight because they ate too many apples. Like, it's always so funny to me when you were talking about like what I'd want to, the myths, like when people are like, oh, it's fruit's the problem. And I'm like, we are not going to go down that path of fruit being the problem, but we can discuss this further, where this is coming from, what fear.
Yeah, I prefer to kind of look at the all or nothing mentality from the angle of, let's say you had $1,000, okay, and somehow you lost a $20 bill. Are you going to throw away the other $980 just because you lost $20? Probably not.
Perfect.
You're probably going to be like, oh, that's unfortunate,
right,
but I'm going to keep this other $980.
Right.
And that's how people fall off the rails with their diet. They have a couple of cookies, or they they have a cheat meal, and they're like, well, I was on this. Usually they're on some kind of fad diet to cut out all carbs. And they're like, well, I just had some carbs, so clearly I'm not on my diet anymore.
Exactly.
So I'm going to, continue the rest of the weekend. Same thing with time wasting during the day. People will waste some time and, or somebody will, upset them or make them mad about something. And I'm like, okay, well, you got mad for 5 minutes about somebody that was an asshole when you were driving. Are you going to be pissed off for the other 23 hours and 55 minutes of your day?
Right.
Hopefully not, but some people are.
But what's interesting about the examples you just said, people have perspective of those units of measure, if that makes sense. What's challenging about nutrition is you really don't have an idea of what your budget should be in theory, and these calories are, again, kind of arbitrary. You talk to any woman who's trying to lose weight, unfortunately they just throw this 1,000 to 1,200 calorie amount out, and you're like, that's giving toddler. I don't know why you think that's a good place to start. And then the second problem is apps like MyFitnessPal have so many wrong entries. I know you can scan things in, but people can type in chicken and make it however many calories, and if you're using that as your main source over and over again, you could be drastically overeating or undereating. Or the next area where people make mistakes, how you weigh your food, right? So why I'm bringing this up is as an engineer, I'm like, oh, this is a variable that can't be controlled. Control it. So I made a nutrition app, and I basically put a lot of foods in perspective, but in a way that's measured where people would know. So instead of saying 100 grams of blueberries or 100 grams of strawberries where people are just scratching your head, I'm like, that square rectangle pack? Yeah, that's this many calories. And then it's just easier.
The standard size little
square. They're always the same.
The little 6-inch square at the grocery store.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the whole app is basically transferred to be in metrics that you're used to seeing these items. And also for produce, I just wrote a medium one, a large one. And then you just know, okay, there's a smallest one, there's a largest one. If you grab the medium one, chances are you're going to be plus or minus 30 calories from what I wrote. And then there's fast food items in there. And just so you see wow, I could really have this much food that hasn't been processed and fill my stomach, or I could have this much for that same cost. A lot of my Instagram posts were look what you can eat for that same cost that will give you those satiety cues.
So a little bit more simplified, I guess you could say.
Definitely.
So you have an app then?
Yeah, it's a web app.
What's the name of the app?
It's I believe it's just neeks93.com/app. I'll give you the link. We'll drop the link in it.
We'll drop it in the description.
We'll drop it in there. Yeah, it's free.
The other question I had was regarding your social media, or where anybody that wants to connect with you.
Sure.
You on Instagram, TikTok, or website? You want to drop any of those links? Or just kind of let us know what they are?
Instagram is probably the best place, and it's at Neeks93, NEEKS93. Roll through the DMs. We'll send you any links to any articles. I have a ton of blog posts in terms of analogies for things that I've written in the nutrition world. And I try to oversimplify is what I try to do. I'm as an engineer, I want to simplify and solve problems efficiently. If you think like that and you think you'd benefit from said blog posts, hit me up. I'll let you know.
And you do one-on-one coaching, or is this a business for you?
I used to take on clients. I do not anymore. But I have always answered every question that's rolled through my DM, and that was challenging more so when there were TV shows going on and there was a lot more DMs, but I promise those DMs are not as full, and I will always take the time out of my day to respond, whether that's a comment or a DM.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
As far as the dieting piece, for someone listening who's stuck in between kind of that yo-yo dieting cycle, and feels overwhelmed by nutrition, because it can feel very overwhelming. Right. There's so much information out there.
Yep.
What's one small but meaningful step that people can take today to start making progress?
Sure. Something really small that I think makes a big impact is in some capacity trying to up your protein level, right? If you can ideally up your protein content in your meals, and I know that's going to be challenging because you're like, what kind? Or, and again, you can Google that. It's just going to help keep you satiated longer. And you could say more vegetables as well. Basically, the two little cheats are adding protein and vegetables to your meals, but by no means avoiding carbohydrates. But those would be the two things that, if I wasn't going to have someone track all their calories, but I wanted them to, in some capacity, start trending towards having enough protein in their diet, I would tell them to take their height in centimeters as their initial goal for what they should be targeting for their grams of protein intake, and then go plus or minus like 30. You don't have to be like, oh, I have to hit 170 is your number. Start maybe 150, because it's going to be challenging if you don't eat protein to hit that number. It's going to seem like it's crazy. But I would start there. I would, in some capacity, start tracking your protein and just try to up your vegetables and your fiber. So without tracking everything, you'd start having an idea of how to craft those meals around those sources, so you're staying full and, again, reaching your goals.
Okay, so I've actually read James Clear's Atomic Habits.
Yeah.
So 1% better is a concept in there. Another one, if I'm remembering correctly, is called habit stacking, which is one of my favorite ones. So I'm going to add on to what you just said about, intaking a little bit more protein and vegetables. Yep. So we don't want to change everything overnight. In fact, we can't. It feels very overwhelming. So the idea about habit stacking, the short version, I know that you know this, but our listeners might not know this, is that you add 1 or 2 things into your routine, right? Like maybe eating a little bit more protein or eating a little bit more vegetables, and you start there.
Yep.
And then once you have accomplished that, and that doesn't feel overwhelming, and you've kind of assimilated that into your daily routine, then you add 1 more thing on top of that. And then that doesn't feel overwhelming because you're only adding 1 thing at a time.
Right.
So where have you seen habit stacking play into your life or anything like that?
Yeah, now that you say that, I do remember when clients do usually get discouraged if they're not hitting it and they feel like Monday through Friday they got to hit their protein goal. I would just encourage them to, like, okay, if you're dividing your overall protein goal by your 3 meals or your 4 meals, aim to just hit a meal with, that 30 grams of protein in it. So it's not like on Monday I'm starting and I'm doing the entire week of hitting this perfect goal. It's like, hey, maybe I can hit 4 random meals in this week that hit that goal. Cool. Once I've done that, okay, like you said, stack on that next meal, stack on maybe a whole day. Then you get your day and you're like, okay, maybe I could do 2 whole days this week. It's stacking, and in my idea, slightly less daunting, I guess, than that, oh, I got to hit this crazy number by the end of every day. And if I don't, I failed. No, just let's start with like some recipes and meals that you enjoy, that you look forward to. Another thing that is frustrating, but I think really important, is for you to take the time to see what ingredients and food items you enjoy, rather than someone just paying them to write a meal plan. I could write meal plans all day for the way I can eat, but if you're not looking forward to that breakfast, God, that's not going to stick. Like if you like an egg breakfast versus like more savory breakfast, I should say, or if you want cereal, if you want oatmeal, there's different things, and we want you to look forward to it. So I hope if you are working with someone, they design meals that you actively look forward to with ingredients that, again, you have locally at your store and are looking forward to.
Yeah, as a personal trainer and just a fitness proponent in general, I always recommend that to people. Yeah. Talking about the exercise portion of it, you're spot on with the diet portion of it there, recommending things that people like eating. Yep. With exercise, it's the same thing. If you don't like weightlifting, that's fine. Do reformer Pilates or yoga or hiking, or there's going to be something that you find intuitively, intrinsically valuable that's going to be a form of exercise. You don't have to do something. Just move your body.
Find something that makes
find something that makes you feel good, right? Just like find something that tastes good for you.
Yeah.
So as we get kind of close to the end of our episode here, I want to talk about the fact that you've worn a lot of hats throughout your career. You're an engineer, you've been a D1 athlete, you've played sports, you've been on TV shows, and probably a bunch of other things that I'm missing, right? Bodybuilding.
Got the big ones.
You've been a coach, an athlete, an author, right? All these things. What mindset or belief has helped you to continue to grow and perform across so many areas of your life?
It's easy. It's the 1%. It's being 1% better every single day, no matter what category, what element of life. It's a lot less daunting to focus on just winning that next day of being 1%. And that looks different every single day. And that looks different on each person. So my 1% versus somebody else's percent is going to look different. And I think it's just exciting to know that if everyone clocks in with their 1% and they continue to show up, which is the biggest thing, just continue to show up even on those days that you don't feel like it, you are going to accomplish what you want to.
Okay. And not only will your 1% look different than my 1%, look different than our listeners' 1%, but your 1% today will look different than your 1% tomorrow.
Absolutely.
Each 1% is probably always going to be different.
Yes.
But as long as you're moving in the right direction, I prefer to say sort of put one foot in front of the other. Rome wasn't built in a day. The pyramids of Egypt weren't built in a day, right?
Correct.
But if you just keep envisioning stacking one block at a time, it might not seem like much. Yeah. But then when you look back in the rearview mirror at the book that you wrote, or the physique that you were able to build, or the podcast that you were able to build, or the finances that you were able to save, like those little tiny blocks that you're stacking up on top of each other add up to something really big. In fact, they start to generate momentum,
exactly,
which is a huge concept. So I think that's probably something that you've also experienced as well.
Definitely.
So after everything you've been through this far in your life and your career, how do you personally define mental strength?
Mental strength in my mind is showing up when you don't feel like it, right? It's deciding that I'm tired and I'm still going to show up. It may look different, like we just described, right? There's some days I'm exhausted, I'm tired, I don't feel like clocking to the gym, and I'm still deciding to show up. So in my mind, that mental toughness is doing what you know you need to do to reach that overall goal that you'd set out, even when you don't feel like it.
So maybe getting in touch with your why.
Yeah, for
like
me, that's
why,
what it looks like. It's the why. The why that gets you there when you don't feel like it.
Yeah, not only why did I start doing this, but why do I keep continuing to do this, and remind yourself of that when you don't want to go do that workout, or you don't want to eat this healthy meal, or you don't want to save the money. Right. Remind yourself of the why, and then that'll help you kind of keep moving forward.
Right.
Staying strong.
Yeah. That's worked for me.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good concept. I mean, you've accomplished a lot in your life, so I really appreciate you sharing your thoughts and your opinions and your experiences. It's been very insightful. I'm wondering if there's anything else that you'd like to discuss today that we haven't already talked about?
I think that's it.
Any last messages that you want to leave our listeners as far as the younger generation, people coming up right now that are high school, youth, D1 athlete, anybody that's kind of coming up and maybe struggling with any of the things that we talked about today?
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, I feel like a lot of people are dealing with social media differently, but I remember when I did my speech for a local high school, I remember really just kind of pushing to remind them that social media is a highlight reel, and what you see isn't necessarily what the full picture is. You're getting a glimpse. And I would encourage everybody to talk to people that have accomplished things that you want to accomplish and get their insight and understand what their struggles were, because everybody has them. Nobody talks about them and posts about them as much as, let's say, their successes and their highlight reel may show. And then the only other point is, and I remember I told the entire high school, which blew up my DMs, but I would say the same thing with anyone that's ever listening to this. If you roll into my DMs, I will reach back out, send you an audio message, a video message, and answer any question I humanly can. It just feels nice to help out. And if there's someone who's struggling through something that I've struggled through and I've got some insight on it, I will always take the time to share.
Well, Nika, I appreciate you taking the time to share your messages today on the podcast.
Sure. You
may get some more DMs after our listeners listen to this.
Looking forward to it.
I really appreciate you sharing your real experiences, because a big scope of this podcast is to talk about the stuff that isn't on the front page of social media.
Right.
Social media is very highly curated to mostly the good things,
right.
But pretty much every person who I've brought on to share their stories on this episode has talked about struggles or negative things that have happened throughout the course of their career, because these are very real and they happen to everybody.
Right.
And if somebody tells you that they didn't struggle with any of this stuff, they're probably lying to you. So a big scope of this is really to share those stories and normalize talking about this stuff.
Right.
So I thank you for sharing your experiences.
Sure.
And unless you had anything else that you'd like to say, we can go ahead and wrap up here.
That's all. Thank you.
All right, Nika. Thanks for taking the time to be here. I'll talk to you later.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.